Prime Minister Mark Carney is addressing the media in Huntsville. Let's listen live right now.
On those positive aspects going forward. Thank you.
Avant de poser ma question, possible de répondre en français sur la possibilité
My question, maybe you can answer in French about the possibility of a deal by August 1st. Well, if you could repeat what you replied to my colleague Mickey in French if there's no agreement by August 1st. The answer was that we'll have to wait and see. These are complex negotiations that are ongoing, and they're happening in real time, as I just mentioned. Minister LeBlanc, other ministers, and my cabinet chief will be there in Washington in the coming days in order to continue negotiating. But these are complex negotiations. The Americans have several objectives, and they change from time to time, so it's even more complex because of that. But one thing is clear. The government of Canada will not accept a bad deal. It's not our objective to have any deal, just any deal. We will pursue a deal that's in the best interest of Canadians. Now, about your bill on projects of national interest, it's our bill. There's been some discussions, and some provinces today said that they want pipelines, and other provinces like Quebec and Newfoundland said that they're more interested in critical minerals. Do you fear that this might divide provinces instead of unite them? And what will you do to make sure that these projects are distributed fairly? Well, first of all, it's a positive approach. The question is, what are the best projects for Canadians? Sure, there will be provinces or people in the private sector with other questions, but the issue is, what is a project of national interest? There are several projects that involve a number of different provinces. For example, there are links between the power grid in British Columbia, Alberta, and between Yukon and the Northwest Territory. And this will open up opportunities for other projects, for example, critical minerals. But will also provide other economic opportunities that the 3 or 4 provinces and territories will benefit from. And there are other examples like that. There are projects for Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec in the energy sector. The energy project, in English, is Wind West, but that affects Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and it involves several provinces. In order to move forward on projects of national interest, it is probably almost always the case that a project, as I just mentioned, will involve several provinces. So the process is to unify our country.
The question was whether or not this could divide the country, because we have different parts of the country proposing different projects. And maybe I went on too long, but in effect, what I was saying was that, no, actually, it's the contrary. For the projects to be of interest, to be of national interest, it has to benefit multiple stakeholders, multiple provinces, advance our interests, advance the interests of Indigenous people, also move us towards our climate objectives. So I gave the example of an intertie project in the northwest corner of British Columbia, which has benefits for the Yukon, for the Northwest Territories, for Alberta, and actually unlocks critical minerals and other investments. So that's how you see the elements of unification. There's the port-to-port-to-port project that's been proposed by the four western provinces, including BC and the territories, would be another example, and Wind West, which implicates, if I can put it that way, all of the Atlantic provinces.
We'll do last question.
Oui.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Oui.
Évidemment, la question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. The issue of tariffs can mean that certain sectors will be penalized. Do you have any agreements for assistance for the auto sector or steel sector, for example, or anything at this time for aluminum or lumber? Will there be aid programs for those industries that might suffer from tariffs? That's a very important question. And first off, I have to say that it is a dynamic situation, especially in the aluminum sector. Right now, we're seeing a hike in the price of aluminum in the U.S., and the result of that is that we're seeing an impact, and that's just at this moment, because it's a fluid, dynamic situation. And so we're seeing that impact on aluminum companies and workers in that sector. It's a little bit less than in the steel sector. So yes, we can provide responses in the aluminum sector and then also in the lumber sector. We'll have to work together with the provinces. We'll be doing all of that at the same time as we'll be trying to reach a deal with the Americans. Is there any timeline for that possible aid? Well, just a few points. The U.S. process for lumber is working on a schedule that is different from August 1st because it's a more legal process. It's not necessarily a presidential initiative like the others. But we would like the process for lumber to be tightened with other negotiations. So there isn't necessarily a deadline for lumber and aluminum, but that could change. But it will probably be the case that in the next couple of months, there will be more perspective. We'll see other needs for support for the sectors that have been the most affected. And another point. At this time, effective tariffs in Canada are very low. They're lower than other countries. And there are some sectors that have been effective, as you mentioned.
The first thing in terms of addressing affected sectors, I observed that there's a different timeline for forest products because it's part of a longer-standing trade action by the United States. There's a legal process. What we're looking to do is bring that into the same timeline, if possible, as the other negotiations. We should address it, and we have proposals in order to do that. We will have to see. So it could be a different deadline or timeline for addressing support for those workers. With respect to aluminum, the impact has been less than it has been in steel for a variety of reasons, but that's not. But it's still an impact, and for all these sectors, in effect, as we get to the start of the next month, we'll be taking stock and looking to provide support. All of which to say, when one looks, and these sectors are very much, they are affected. Differing degrees, but they are affected. It's understandable. These are very large tariffs. This is a very sharp change in our trading relationship. But when we look at them outside of those very important sectors, steel, aluminum, automobiles, forest products, prospectively copper, and pharmaceuticals, the effective tariff that faces most Canadian goods and services is very low. I just want to finish, to reemphasize the spirit of this meeting, the substance of the meeting, and the substance of our approach, which is positive. This is about building this country. We're getting more and more concrete about how we're going to do that, and it's about building other relationships. At the same time, if at all possible, we would be developing our relationships, coming to a good accord with the United States. But the importance is to build up.
Just quickly, what happens if there's no deal on August 1st?
I mean, we'll see. We're working to get the best deal for Canadians, and that's the focus now. I think what's absolutely clear is we have a lot to do in this country. We have a lot to do that's positive to build. That's becoming more concrete. Canadians are excited about that. You know, Canadians are. What's coming out is how fundamentally positive Canadians are. They want to build. They want to move forward. They don't want to dispute. And if there's challenges south of the border with that relationship, we'll focus on what we can do in this great country. And you know, if you're looking for where to spend your vacation, Canadians are spending their vacations across this great land. And this is my last word. I will just give a short plug for the One Canada Pass, which means that it's important. Visiting our national parks, visiting our museums, bringing your children, and including bringing your children 18 and under via rail at these reduced prices or free. And it's a pleasure that Canadians are taking advantage of it.
Can we leverage the ostriches? Can we leverage the ostriches?
What I'll say to that is that Canadians are fundamentally positive people. That's what Canadians are. Canadians are making choices to visit this great country, spend time here with their family, with their friends. They're making choices to buy Canadian products. We're making choices to build Canadian projects. That is happy, positive, productive, and that's the true nature of Canada.
Have you talked to President Trump lately, Prime Minister?
Okay, so we've been listening to Prime Minister Mark Carney speak to the media. This is at the First Minister's meeting in Huntsville. Topic of discussion, of course, the economy, trade with the U.S., and how complex the negotiations are. So Carney also said, quote, one thing is clear, the government of Canada will not accept a bad deal. So this is with respect to the August 1st deadline to get a trade deal done. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to impose 35% tariffs on Canadian goods, setting a new deadline for trade talks that were supposed to have wrapped up by now. Carney said last week that a deal will likely include some tariffs and that he expects talks to intensify ahead of the deadline. Of course, we will continue to follow the very latest and bring it to you as it develops.